Today we're going to look at creating a 50-word third-person short story for Jane Eyre. In order to do this, it's a bit of a challenge. You need to do some planning and thinking first. So the first thing you need to decide is what's going to be the structure of your narrative. Now here I've got the traditional triangle structure where you have your orientation and your setting, your complications rising to a climax, and at an equal pace the denouement or resolution of the story. Inside, of course, we have the theme, and remember, the beginning and the end of the story are united in that thematic purpose. This type of short story structure is where you start with the climax. So you often find stories that are about crimes being solved begin in this way. So we start with the crime scene and then we have the investigators solve that crime to its resolution. This is a little bit of a change on that. This is a twist in the story where you start very slowly, you build anticipation, you foreshadow, you use clues in a very subtle way. You reach that climax and the story dramatically ends with the twist in the story. You note it's covered in blue here because all the actions and events are united by the theme. The beginning and the end still link. So you might ask yourself, all right, what will I want to reveal about characters? And I'll consider the qualities of those characters that will emerge in the story of Jane Eyre and the narrative when Jane might find out the background stories of these particular characters or actually engage with them. When I consider that, what will this reveal about the sorts of lessons Jane will learn from them? Because the purpose of the Bildungsroman is for her to go on not only a physical journey, but an emotional and spiritual journey. And what does Jane learn from those characters will help you just make decisions for your short story. When you go to write your short story, consider what's at stake for your characters. Whenever they tell a story about themselves or we learn something about them or they engage in a particular incident from which we will get a better understanding of Jane Eyre's life, what's at stake for them? What lies perhaps are the characters telling him or herself? So often characters might have to have their own experiences and revelations perhaps at a climax in the story. And what is going to be the main complication for them that might inform your own narrative? So you need to think about, all right, I'm going to tell the story of X. What do I understand about X? How does Jane understand X? What lies or complications lie in the background of the story of X in order to help Jane later on in the novel? Look at the typical images that are associated with the characters you're going to tell the story around. Are they Gothic images? Are there certain colours that are normally associated with that character? Does that character use particular dialogue, interact with other people? Are there symbols, for example, birds, that might be useful for your character's story? So ask yourself, all right, of all those character symbols and understanding of the character we have in the text, what might I particularly use? And then we're going to craft a 50-word short story. Now, just because it's short doesn't make it easier. So let's consider telling the story of when Roland and old Mr. Rochester meet Edward's bride, Bertha, prior to the dowry being decided upon. So, in meeting, do they meet in Jamaica or is the meeting set up between the families in London? Perhaps in the first instance, I want to show from the outset that Bertha was a desirable woman, that it was not only her wealth but her appearance that drew Roland and Mr. Rochester in. Remember, Roland and Mr. Rochester have their own motivations for Edward Rochester marrying Bertha, most importantly money, but also to ensure that their estate's not broken up. So it's really important that this particular relationship works well. Why have they chosen someone from overseas, and Is this to prevent them having to give any money to Edward to set himself up? So is it the incredible wealth that Bertha brings to the relationship that is so important? So when I start to write a 50-word short story, I have to think about word choice, lines, symbols, and how those are going to help me tell the story. So in this beginning here, I've got Black Beauty, so I've started with some alliteration. The prize was escorted, and I'll just jump this bolded piece, down the stairs. Now, is that what I want, this idea of her needing to be escorted? Or do I want to establish from the outset that something was awry, that something was different about Bertha? I like Black Beauty and I like the word prize because they're looking to win and gain something from her. But maybe I might change how she comes downstairs. Does she slide or slip or slither or sashay or fly or float down the stairs? Do I want to say down the stairs and use up my words here, or just have downstairs? So I need to really think about, all right, she's arrived, there's some complications established. I need to show that the way she comes down the stairs might be in conflict with what the characters imagined of her, or that they think she'll do nicely for a young Edward Rochester in the prime of his youth. If I don't like that start, perhaps I might start this way. Heavy red damask curtains concealed their prey. And perhaps I'm going to be representing Roland and old Mr. Rochester as the hunters, and here Bertha is the prey. And I might start by using this colour red, which we see in the novel. And that might give us somewhere to go in terms of the complications, this idea of death and passion. I've chosen the word, for example, heavy deliberately because I want to see that it's a heavy, dark atmosphere, and I might start to draw out that gothic image, considering I've used here this word prey. It might build that symbol. Of course, I've got my characters there and prey, so we've got two characters there. What complications might emerge? How will I bring in the money? What will be the climax of my story? So you're going to try and do this. I want you to fill in this sheet first, and then I want you to have a go at writing a 50-word short story, and we're going to share these.